Welcome to the show, everybody. It's Capital Interactive with Basim and Adam. We have a very interesting topic today, a topic we've been reached out to quite a bit over the past year, and specifically right now. And let's talk about PPP. We're into PPP round 2 of funding. PPP stands for Paycheck Protection Program, for those of you not in the know. And we want to talk about some of the specifics. Basim, add your 2 cents.
Yeah, so this, like Adam said, he's calling it the second round of funding. It's actually the 4th round of funding. But the reason he's calling it the second round of funding is because this is the second time that your company will be eligible to actually get money, potentially. So the first time around started, I think, back in like April.
April of last year, of 2020.
April of 2020. And this is actually a second bite at the apple. So there's certain companies that are going to qualify for a second round of funding. If you've already applied, you might be eligible again, and that's what this thing is about. So this is, potentially a second round of funding. If you haven't applied, you can potentially still apply the first time around. Right.
So that's a great starting point. Let's start literally right there. First time of funding, first time eligibility, because the rules have changed in terms of businesses and so on and so forth that may want to apply now, because there's been an expanded view of industries. There's also been an expanded view of uses. Sure. Should you want to qualify for a first time of eligibility for PPP?
Sure. And actually, so our video today is mostly going to cover the changes. Few things before we get started that I do want to talk to you about. Look, we're providing general information here. We're going to give you the links to the actual government websites where all this information lives. It's being updated on literally a daily basis. So as of the recording of this, most of this information is accurate, but we want to make sure that you're talking to your lawyers, talking to your CPAs, and getting professional advice on your particular situation, because, everybody's situation is slightly different. But in general, we're going to talk about what the guidelines are and whatnot, and what the changes have been from this round of funding versus the last round of funding. So before we kind of jump into that, I just want to make sure you understand that we're recommending that you talk to your lawyers and your CPAs about this, because they're the ones that can know your specific situation, can talk through that. With that said, the funding actually expanded eligibility to include news organizations, which weren't a part of it before, 501c6s, which are a type of a nonprofit, destination marketing organizations, and housing cooperatives. So in the first round of funding, some of those organizations weren't eligible, and now they are potentially eligible. Another thing that happened, if you have it used to be 500 employees, now it's actually 300 employees or more. So in the first round of funding, a lot of companies who are rather large in size, they got funding that the government wasn't super excited about. So now they've actually reduced the amount of employees, and that's 300 employees per location. 300 employees or less per location.
Right. I think they've gone a step further. If you're publicly traded, you're not eligible for that round.
Yeah. Actually, publicly traded companies are ineligible, because the whole idea is this is giving people access to capital that don't have other places to get it. And if you're publicly traded, the thought is maybe you can go to the capital markets and get it. Mm-hmm. And what are you eligible? You're eligible for up to 2.5 times your average monthly payroll, with a maximum loan amount of $10 million. So this new expansion allows for expansion of some of the forgivable costs, which include group, life, disability, dental, and vision insurance. So originally some of those things were excluded. The insurance costs weren't necessarily included as part of the payroll expenses. Now those have been added in.
Right. Which is a nice change. I mean, the rule on the first round, or last year's funding, I should say, was like generally 75-25, right? 75% of that multiple towards payroll, specifically payroll, and then 25% for miscellaneous expenses such as rent and maybe common expenses such as that. But they've expanded the view of the use of funds on this round.
So what Adam's talking about is, when you actually get your loan, you're supposed to use 75% of that towards payroll, and then 25% towards, you can use it towards certain other expenses. Another thing, new businesses not in business before February 15th of 2019 may elect to instead use their average monthly payroll cost for the period of January 2020 through February 29th of 2020. So if you weren't in business before that period, you can actually use that first 6 weeks or whatever in 2020 as average payroll costs, and then expand that to 2.5 times your monthly payroll. Seasonal businesses are able to use 2.5 times their average monthly payroll incurred for any 12-week period between February 15th in 2019 and February 15th, 2020. So why that's important is in a seasonal business, you might have some more employees during a certain particular time of the year. This allows for a little bit more eligibility because you can pick any 12 weeks. So you can pick your highest payroll 12 weeks in the year. So like if you have something that's around Christmas, maybe you pick the 12 weeks leading up to Christmas or whatever it is. So that's what that. So as far as first-time eligibility, those are some of the updates to the first-time eligibility to the first-time loan. So that's for people that are applying for the PPP loan the first time.
Very first time. Right.
Yeah.
No, that's great. So that's now a natural segue into, let's talk about the second round of funding and maybe the eventual delineation between second round of funding or first round increases. Let's start now with people that are going after their second round.
So if you're going after your second round of funding, this means that you've got your PPP loans from the first time around and you've already applied for forgiveness. You can now is only eligible for second round funding if you have employees of equal to or less than 300 employees, or 300 per location, have used or will use the full amount of the first PPP loan and demonstrate at least a 25% year-over-year quarterly reduction in gross receipts, or at least a 25% reduction in gross receipts from calendar year 2019 to calendar year 2020. So what does that mean? That means that if you can show that when you're looking at 2019 numbers, let's say you're looking at second quarter 2019 numbers and you're looking at second quarter 2020 numbers, if you can show that the gross revenues for that particular period is down 25%, that's something that helps qualify you. So if in 2019 you made $100, in 2020 for that quarter you need to have made $75.
Right. And just as a real quick, as it pertains to things like this in just general eligibility, to Basim's point earlier, this is where you really need to lean on your counsel, your accountants, and so on and so forth to truly determine this. This is not something any banker or otherwise should be advising on, because we want to make sure that if you're going to apply, you've done your homework and you've really understood if you are truly eligible or not to apply for a second round of funding.
Exactly. So getting back to the 25% reduction, it could be that quarter over quarter, if you're looking at the whole year for 2019 and you're 25% down in 2020, then that also needs to apply. The documents that you can use to prove this are your annual tax returns, your quarterly income statements, your quarterly bank statements. So with this particular second round of loan, the maximum loan amount is $2 million for the company, with a corporate family max of $4 million. So that kind of goes into the multiple locations and all that kind of stuff. The maximum for the whole entire organization, all the locations, would be $4 million, but per individual sub-entity would be $2 million. For loan amounts that are less than $150, they're only requiring certification of gross receipts of the gross receipt reduction. For loan amounts that are above $150,000, you'll need to provide documents of 25% gross receipt reduction, and will require other documents which are to be determined for review. So right now we don't know what those is. Like we said, every single day more information, more interpretation is coming out on these. That's why you got to stay up to date on it. Talk to your lawyers, check the government website, talk to your CPA.
SBA.gov should be one of your first steps when you have questions, because like Basim mentioned, this is going to be updated by the day, by the hour, by the minute, and that's always where the information is going to be posted up to date.
Yeah. And then finally, as we mentioned before, public companies are ineligible for this second round of funding. So that's kind of where we are with the second round of funding.
Second round. So how does that differ? A second round of funding versus a first draw increase?
Yeah. So as we talked about before, there were some changes to first round fundings, and if some of those things allowed your old loan to increase its funding amount, then you can still apply for an increase in funding. So for example, if the seasonality piece, where you're a seasonal business and now you're able to use any 12-week period, and now the 12-week period that you choose is significantly higher than the previous 12-week period, well, you can apply for an increase rather than a second actual loan. And so some of the conditions about that are: first draw PPP loans can be increased under the following. The first loan did not include partnership compensation and subsequent guidance in increased loan amount eligibility. So basically what that means is if you didn't, they changed even during the last PPP loan, some of the things that were eligible. And so if the eligibility of partnership income increased your potential loan amount, but you had already filed the application, you can now go back and reclaim some of those funds. The revision of the 12-week payroll for seasonal employees resulted in an increase in the loan amount eligibility. That's what we just talked about. So if, you know, like we said, now you have more employees because you can pick any 12-week period. Now you can ask to have your first loan increased. And then there's certain revisions for farmers and ranchers that gave additional loan eligibility. So if you have a farm or a ranch, you know, there's some additional changes that allowed for increased loan eligibility on that. The key conditions are, you know, the first loan had to be approved before August 8th. You'll also have to provide documents which support your increase request. Okay, so no matter what it is, you have to, and the total loan amount can't exceed $10 million for the company or $20 million for the larger corporation. And so that's kind of some of the basics of what would allow for a first draw loan increase. So like we said before, I mean, there's been changes coming. There's changes every day. There's interpretations. I really recommend you look at the frequently asked questions on the government and treasury websites about the PPP loan, because that's where all the updates are being made. And that basically is almost like written into the law. So do that, talk to your lawyers, talk to your CPAs, but that's really some of the basics, and see if you're eligible. You might be have an opportunity here to get some more money for the government to help support your business. Adam?
Yeah. No, it's a good point. We'll share a link to the SBA site specifically. Leverage your internal partners, be it CPAs and general counsel, et cetera, to make sure you have a full interpretation of what's going on here. But it definitely, you know, behooves anybody to check their eligibility, and if they are eligible, apply if they're so inclined. So the money is there. If you're eligible, you know, that's your call to make in terms of application. We hope this has been helpful. Obviously, as we've alluded to throughout the course of the video, this is ever changing. This is just as of today, early here in 2020, and I'm sure things will change. Stay up to date. Go to sba.gov. We'll share that link. Yeah. Visit it on the regular if you have any questions or follow-ups. And yeah, Basim, why don't you close us out here?
Sure. Just so you know, applications are already open, so go ahead and talk to your people now. Don't delay. There were funding issues the first time around, but yeah, thank you guys. Like we said, this has been Basim, Tafila, and Adam, the Boz with Capital Interactive. You know, we hope we're providing value for you guys with these podcasts. Make sure you like, share the video with somebody that you think would be interested, and subscribe. We need to have the subscribers as well. So, you know, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe so we know that we're providing value and what else you guys want to hear about. Thanks a lot, guys, and we'll see you the next time.